Welcome, and this is my brand new, to me, Volvo XC90. And if you've been paying attention to the channel, you would have known that I picked this beautiful car up from England for the amazing sum of £990 to take on an Arctic road trip. But how good is it? So I wanted to go through this episode and look at exactly everything that was wrong with this car. On the surface, you'd think from a distance it probably looks okay, but there are lots of different things that we need to look at. So I'm going to go through every different thing and roughly the cost it's going to cost to fix these different things. So let's take a look. So first things first, the paint. The paint is something that it's terrible. I don't think I could say it in any other better way, but it's terrible. Let's have a look. Yes. Listen. Can you see? This is. Listen to that matte finish. Oh, terrible. So yes, that is not what you need on your car's paint. It's pretty much like that all over the car as well. Like everywhere you look, the car is just in such a matte finish. I don't think it came like that from the factory, that's for sure. But the best part about this is it's not an expensive fix if I can fix it well. It's a detail, so I need to just give it a real, it needs a clean for one, but it also needs a clay bar and it needs a polish. It needs a full detail, both inside and out really. But if you look at the outside even more, you can see where it's just generally been neglected and left outside. And all of this just needs a lot of attention. Now I have most of the things to do this, so from a cost point of view, it's really negligible. It's just time. And we all know that these things take a lot of time, but from a cost point of view, I don't think that is in massive cost to fix. But that moves on nicely to the headlights. Now, the headlights are also a problem on this car. If you've ever used one of these cars, seen one of these cars, had one of these cars, you will know that the foggy headlights is just a notorious thing with a lot of cars, but this car specifically. Let's have a look at it. They don't look massively bad on camera. You can see where it's starting to pit there, but if you will look over the other side, you can see how bad this one is. Now these you can polish back, but when they're this sort of damaged, I don't know how good this will be. So I've got a full polishing kit, and that was about €30 for the polishing kit. So what I'll do is I'll sand it fully back and then I will polish it over the top. And apparently if you use then a ceramic coat over the top, it stops them having this effect again, but I'll give it a try. If I can't do that and it doesn't work, it is quite costly, so I will have to change the headlights out, and I'll probably then change them for left-hand drive ones instead of right, because obviously I'm based in France. But the cost to doing that is about €300 for the two. Not crazy, but when you paid $990 for the car, that is a fair chunk. So I'm going to try and avoid that as much as possible. So a €30 polishing is my first port of call with that. So that's €30 for that one. As we move down the car, I move on to these barge boards, running boards, whatever you call them, side step. This one is not, it feels like it's attached, but it actually is corroded under where the bracket is there. They're also fairly tatty, so what I want to do is take them off, clean up the brackets and reattach that so it's properly attached on that back one there. That's again not really a cost, more of a time, maybe a bit 10 quid for spray paint or something like that, just to make sure they're nice and look decent. Otherwise, I think that's not too bad. I'll do that on the other side as well. And the same for this trim as well. Looks like someone's painted over this trim, you can see, but it's not a very good job. So I'm going to sand all those back and repaint those. So that's just the cost of the paint really. So that's not a huge one for that. And I'll do that as I'm detailing it. So as we move around to the back of the car, one other thing is this handle under here, and you won't quite be able to see it here, but if I open this up, you can see that this gets stuck. Now, this is also a common problem on the XC90s. The bar that is under there as part of the handle, it just rusts. So I've followed a tutorial online, obviously everything's just on YouTube these days. And so it's a 4mm bit of stainless steel bar that I've bought that I can replace that. So that was a £5 for that. And so that and a spring, that should replace that. So you just need to take it out, replace that corroded old bar for a new one, and that should be fixed. So that's a £5 to fix that one. So again, we're not doing too bad. They're just like fiddly things, and it's a bit of a ball ache to take the whole thing apart, but it's not so bad, right? So £5 for that bonus. But something that is quite costly, I didn't anticipate this being so costly, is the rear light. Look at this. This damage on the rear light means we obviously need a new rear light if we want it to be perfect. Now this whole rear light is €160, and that's to buy the newer one that has the section here. But if I do that, I have to replace the other one. I can't find one of these for less than €200 just on its own. Yeah, so that's 400. I either pay €200 just for the same one, or I get the upgraded ones, which is the later model, which has the light here. These, instead of here, there's a light here, but that is then 320. Obviously 320 is quite a lot, so that's not a small amount to pay when you've paid so little for the car. But again, I'm going to keep my eye out for a single side. I might be able to pick one up for 100. If I can do that, that'll be brilliant. It would just save me having to spend 300 to replace the two. So I'm going to say around 100, because I have seen one online in the UK. I just have to try and get it from the UK. So that is another problem that I need to fix, but about €100 for that if I can get it. Now lastly, for the exterior, I think lastly anyway, all I can think of is this. This seems to move independently from the rest. It doesn't move when you actually want it to, but I fear that this just might be that bolt or that nut under there just not tightened properly. Look at that. I'm going to need to investigate that a bit more, but it has new wiper blades on it, so I'm hoping that that is simply just something that needs tightening. And I think that's everything for the outside. Again, it just really needs tidying up. You know what I mean? It could do with just a solid valet and a full-on detail. With that, it would just be so much nicer. Now let's move to the inside, where we have a few more things, but again, very cosmetic, so it's nothing crazy, but there are some things. Looking at the screen here, we can see all the different faults that we have. We have the airbag fault, which is actually, in fact, not an airbag fault, it just needs resetting. We also have a parking assist error there as well, which is a common fault. I don't know why it's not coming up now, probably because the car isn't actually on, but it's a common fault with these when a parking sensor goes. You just have to replace them. That's 30 quid, but you have to work out which one it is first. So you have to plug in the Diagnostics and do that first. Again, I've looked up all these online. It just says you can actually plug it in. It tells you which sensor is gone. Then it's a 30 quid sensor online. All you need to then do is replace that sensor, and it should get rid of that fault. I don't think that one's too bad either. It also says I need a service, so I have all the service items anyway, so I will be getting a service done. So that's a couple of the little faults there, which should again be easy fixes. I don't think that should be too bad. He says touch wood, but every time I say that, fucking anyway. The next thing, aside from the dirt here, you can see this is all out, mainly because it had an aftermarket stereo in there that didn't even work properly. It kept just turning on and off, and it was just having a nightmare. So I'm going to replace this for a double din one, and there's one I found called Legendary, something like this, and it allows you to actually still work all the CAN bus things. So I should still be able to, I can do that anyway, that's my cruise control, but I should still be able to use the steering wheel controls and all the parking assist with that one. So I'm just trying to piece together all the bits I need just so I can make that work. So I'm looking at that already, but again, that's more of a nice to have. Obviously radio, but if I'm doing long journeys, I definitely want a radio. Imagine not having a radio for long journeys like I just did. You don't want that. That's absolutely savage. So yeah, radio is one of the big things that I want to get in. And again, it will modernise this entire interior, because I don't actually think the interior is that bad in terms of its like need of modernisation. For a car that's 20 years old now, I actually think that it's a fairly decent, fairly like modern-ish interior. So I don't think it needs too much modernisation, but a screen there that fits in quite nicely, I think that'll be perfect. So that's definitely on the list. I don't know the price of that yet. I reckon that's probably about 200. I didn't need to spend 200. I could just even replace the standard system, but that's just not as fun, and I don't get any of the nice comfort features like CarPlay and stuff like that, which is obviously what I want. So I am going to upgrade that one slightly. Another thing that's down here that doesn't work is actually the fold-in mirrors. I don't know if that's a thing. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do with it, but they just don't work. So I'm going to need to do some investigation on that. I don't know if it's just the fact that the mirrors themselves don't work. I don't know. So I'm going to have to figure that out. It's not the end of the world to not have fold-in mirrors. I just like everything to work, so I'm probably going to investigate it, but if I can't work it out, it's not the end of the world. But I'm still going to try, obviously. That takes me on to this window. It isn't closing properly. You can see here that, if I can focus on it, yeah, that the Volvo badge here is slightly low where it sits. A lot lower than the other side, which is seated properly. So I don't know if it's just dropped slightly in its, in its position on this side, or whether it's more a case of the regulator. So I don't know if it's a regulator issue or a window issue. So I do need to investigate that. A regulator, worst case, about 100 quid. If it's not, you can manually, because they've got an auto setting on them, so you can manually force them up a bit more. And there's some things online to tell you how to not reseat it, but reset the position of it. So I'm going to try this first, because obviously that just makes sense to do. Why wouldn't you do that? So that's that one. So I'm hoping that that's an easy fix rather than the entire door panel off regulator job, because that's obviously more expensive and it's more of a pain in the arse, because taking door cards apart is just not my favourite. Another common fault and a beautiful thing in this car to make it look that much more shitty is this peeling A-pillar. This one isn't quite so bad, but you can see that it's starting to peel away here, so that's lovely. And I also think that the colour, and look how dirty it is up here. Look at that. The colour of this, and that moves me nicely onto the headlining as well. They've actually, I don't even see, they've stapled it up, because the headlining is just sagging so badly, which is just perfect. But again, it's not an expensive fix. I've bought some black headline material. It's a really nice Alcantara, in fact. That was about 50 euros, so that's on its way to me now. And that means I'm just going to take off all the headlining, all the A, B and C pillars, and I'll just retrim them in this beautifully nice Alcantara. And that will make this entire interior just feel so much more modern. The thing I then need to do, because of that, which then is obviously more expensive and more time consuming, is either paint and trim, or paint and get new sun visors and all of the grab handles and stuff like that, because they're all in beige, and beige against black would just look stupid. So I've gone online and I've checked. They don't do any versions in black. They do sun visors from things like V40s, I think, fit in these. They're the same shape and they're black. So I'm probably going to get some V40 sun visors and then spray paint in plastic paint the grab handles and the accessories like the light and everything up here. So that's probably going to cost me about 20 quid in paint. It's 50 for the material for all the pillars and everything and all the headlining. That's probably a day's work in doing that, though. Getting the headlining out is an absolute ball ache, especially in a car this big. It's a ball ache. So that's going to be probably a job in itself, probably a whole video in itself. But I think it's going to make such a difference. And then for the sun visors, I looked at these and they are probably going to cost about 30 quid per side. So again, that's probably about 110 plus 20, 150 to change that. So I'll put on the screen adding it all up now, so you can see where we're at in terms of the cost of fixing everything that needs to be fixed to make it right. Some other minor things in here. The backs of the seats actually look really nice. The headrests too, they're in decent condition. But obviously with some wear, you can see it's got 227,000 miles. It does have wear on the standard places like the bolsters and the bottoms. I've previously stained or restained and recoated the leather in these things, so I'm confident that I can bring that back to make it look a lot more modern and a lot more fresh. So again, I've already got that stuff at home, so that's going to cost me nothing, just to make as a part of the detail, really. And round the back, in the back seat, you can see that this switch is broken, so I'll probably look for a new switch there. But also this handle, I don't know, God knows what's going on with that, but I'm going to have to take this whole thing off and either try and just reseat it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It feels like it's just come off its, I don't know, it's just not working properly, and it's not actually working from the inside. So hopefully I don't need to replace it, and hopefully I can just take it off and put it all back together, and it should hopefully work. If not, maybe 20 quid for that repair. Now, the only other major part of this that needs to be changed, fixed, whatever, is the knocking from under the bonnet when I'm under load. And I've done a lot of research on this, and I am thinking that it is engine mount. And so the engine mounts generally need to be done on this. and there are 3 mounts. It's probably going to cost me about 180 euros to replace all the engine mounts. So I will do that, and hopefully that solves my problem, but I'll do some more investigating before that point. The engine feels super smooth, the gearbox feels super smooth, everything feels really nice, the idle feels nice. It's just when it's under load I'm getting a da-da-da-da-da. So I think it is relating to engine mount. So I'll check them, and worst case scenario I will change all 3, and that is 180 euros. You're probably thinking as well, like, Ross, why are you going to do this to this 20-year-old shitty Volvo? And it's not about making it perfect. It's not about spending all this money to make it an incredible car, because it is a 20-year-old Volvo. That's just not going to happen. But at the same time, it is a car that cost me less than £1,000. So if I can take a car that costs less than £1,000 and bring it up to a level that is a car that can last me all the way to my Arctic trip and back, and also be a nice place to be in, why wouldn't I do that? For something that's so cheap, there's so much value in this, and this is why I love this car. Like, even just driving it back with its niggles and this rattle and stuff like that, it's a fantastic car for the money. The space is absolutely insane. My kids were like, oh my God, there is so much space in this car. And it's just got little touches, which is like pure family car. And again, it is faded, it's just dirty, and it just needs, I mean, a bit of love and a bit of touch. That's what it needs, just bring it back, not to necessarily its former glory, but to a point where someone can enjoy it, myself, for potentially a few more years. Of course, there'll be some modifications along the way as well. I want to make this not just okay for the trip, but I want to make it comfortable for the trip. I also want to make it capable for this Arctic road trip that I'm going on later this year. So things like, I would like a bull bar at the front, some potentially extra lights, potentially a roof rack so I can take a spare pair of snow wheels. I don't know, I'm probably going to get carried away. But at the same time, I still want to make this as good as it can be. Why would I not want to if I can do so for relatively small amounts of money compared to what it would cost to buy this over here? As I've mentioned, I live in France, and if I was going to buy one of these over here in France, it would have cost me at least 5,000 euros. Some of them, even the same age and same mileage, are going for ridiculous amounts like 7,500 euros. So if I spend maybe 2 all in, worst case scenario, I think that's probably a good deal. I will of course be undertaking all this work here on the channel. If this is the sort of thing you like, bringing cars back to former glory, then stay tuned. Also, if you like Arctic adventures, then stay tuned, because that's exactly where this thing's going to be going. And if you like different car flips, different degenerate car builds, just doing things on cars to have fun, then this is probably a channel that you might enjoy. So feel free to subscribe and drop me a comment on a car that you'd love to see me either acquire myself or flip. One of the things I'm trying to get into is buying cars to flip them. Obviously not this one, it's from another country, it just wouldn't make sense over here. But there are a number of different cars over here I would like to purchase and sell after I've fixed them, and hopefully for a profit. So I can do that more on the channel and then grow the different things I have and pay for some of the repairs on this thing. So if this is the thing you like, do subscribe along for more. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one when I start fixing this thing, or maybe the first clean, because it desperately needs one. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.